Okay, we are recording now. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the second half of today's webinar series. We have a panel of New Mexico Tech alumni to speak about cybersecurity. My name is Christopher Garcia, and I'm the Small Business Development Specialist at the SBDC. I will be coordinating the webinar in the background. So if you have a question for me, feel free to chat and let me make sure the chat is enabled for everybody, and it surely is. If anything goes wrong throughout the webinar, would you please raise your hand for me? And in fact, I want to see if you could see me and hear me. Can you raise your hand? Thank you, Carolyn. Perfect. And if you would be so kind as to put all questions into the Q&A feature at the bottom of the screen. It's either at the bottom or top of your screen. And just to make sure Q&A is working, can you Q&A me? Hi, hello, how are you? Oh, this is even better. Carolyn says, I'm muted, correct. You are totally muted, Carolyn. You don't worry one bit. So the Q&A seems to be working. I got a nice chat. Hi, Tom. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our host, Steffie Rawlings. She's the Center Director at the Technology Commercialization Accelerator at New Mexico Tech. And I'll let you take it away.
Greetings and welcome to our second week of webinars as we celebrate Cybersecurity Awareness Month. My name is Steffie Rawlings. I'm the coordinator of the New Mexico Small Business Development Program called the Technology Commercialization Accelerator here at NMT. The TCA has collaborated with New Mexico Cybersecurity Centers of Excellence, also here at NMT, to celebrate Cybersecurity Awareness Month. We will be providing webinars related to education, careers, industry, and community throughout the month of October. We have scheduled 2 webinars a week as we try to provide cybersecurity awareness to the residents of New Mexico. We are recording these presentations, and the recordings will be placed on the New Mexico Small Business Development Center YouTube channel. We will have a Q&A at the end of the presentation, so if you have any questions or comments, please use the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. This week, we will be presenting information on careers in cybersecurity. This morning, we provided a webinar on the National Initiative for Cybersecurity Education, Cybersecurity Workforce Framework. And this afternoon, we will have Dr. Lorie, Lybreck lead a panel of NMT alumni that are currently working in cybersecurity. A little background about the TCA. The center is part of the New Mexico Small Business Development Centers that has been in operation for 2.5 years. We provide no-cost confidential counseling to the residents of New Mexico regarding intellectual property, which includes patent, trademarks, copyrights, and trade secrets. We are also tasked to provide cybersecurity awareness to innovators, entrepreneurs, small businesses, and all residents of New Mexico. We have partnered with the New Mexico Cybersecurity Centers of Excellence to provide these webinars as we look to provide cybersecurity awareness. The New Mexico Small Business Development Center provides free training and webinars to all New Mexico residents as we try to educate and inform residents about building sustainable businesses to promote the economy of New Mexico. We welcome you and are glad you are here to help us celebrate and hopefully to learn more about cybersecurity. I would like to take this time to thank all the panelists and speakers that will be presenting during this event. Thank you. Next, I would like to introduce Dr. Lorie Lybreck, Director of the New Mexico Cybersecurity Center of Excellence, as she will be introducing and leading the New Mexico Tech Alumni Panel. Go ahead, Lorie. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Steffie. So just so you know, I am the Director of the New Mexico Cybersecurity Center of Excellence for the state of New Mexico. The center is housed at New Mexico Tech, and we are happy to have 3 of our alumni with us today to talk a little bit about their... Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine.
Okay. Are you hearing me, Sean?
Yeah, I can hear you, Lorie.
Okay. Okay, great. So my alumni panel today is going to talk a little bit about their experience between their academics and then their pathways going into careers. And later this month, we'll have a session about NMCCoE and particularly more focused on the CyberReady initiative for the state. But for the moment, I want to introduce the first of our panelists. His name is Alexander Kent, and he is a former PhD student, who's a Dr. Kent now, who is going to, as each of our panelists will, tell you a little bit about himself, and then I have some questions for the panelists, which we will certainly insert yours if you have some more pointed questions for them. Alex, tell us a little bit about your career path.
Oh, yeah, of course. Thanks, Lorie. Well, to start out, I'm calling in from Minnesota, where I've lived for the last 5 years. But I actually am a remote worker for a company in Virginia that I'm guessing most people have heard of, Capital One, the what's in your wallet kind of company. We do lots of credit cards and banking and all that kind of thing. And I am a senior distinguished engineer here. And I focus on all things cybersecurity, but my emphasis right now is on what we call data protection and ensuring that the data that Capital One has, which is a lot, there's a lot of customers, making sure all of that customer data is appropriately protected, both from a cybersecurity point of view as well as a privacy point of view. And then ensuring that we meet all the regulatory requirements that we have for the jurisdictions we operate in. And jurisdictions mean both country level jurisdictions, so the United States, the other countries we have credit cards and business in, including the United Kingdom as well as Canada. But cybersecurity also is not just about the national level things, so we also deal with all the regulatory requirements at each and every state level, and we operate in all 50 US states, so we deal with all the different rules and regulations associated with each state when it comes to cybersecurity. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. Getting to the state and place I am in today, I actually started at New Mexico Tech in 1991 as an undergraduate computer science major. I lived in Baca Hall, I think it was called, the quiet dorm, guessing that's still there. And spent 4 years getting my undergrad bachelor's degree in computer science. My advisor was Victor Yodankin, who some folks maybe remember. He's now doing so I don't know if I'd call it a small startup anymore, but has a small company that's focused on real-time Linux and timing information, and some work that he initiated here at New Mexico Tech, and spun off into a commercial endeavor that's quite successful these days. And then I finished that degree. I almost went to work for Motorola in Texas. They had an offer for me. They'd come in and interviewed lots of folks at New Mexico Tech. And by the way, this was 1995 and cybersecurity really wasn't a thing yet. So like my 4-year undergraduate degree in computer science really didn't talk about cybersecurity. We talked about software integrity and the importance of doing the right thing and having bounds checking and strings and all of the things that matter in a foundational cybersecurity kind of way, but it was definitely not called cybersecurity. Anyway, turned down the Motorola job, the software engineering job that they had offered me, and decided to stay at New Mexico Tech for another 2 years and get a master's degree in computer science. And I did that with Al Stavely as my advisor. And that focus was actually on software engineering and clean room design. So my master's project was on clean room software engineering and how to do more formal design requirements as you create software and how to do testing around that. So a great project there. Again, not cybersecurity, but when I look back and I see what I did, it was very much about creating good software that would be resilient in a adversarial cybersecurity kind of environment. It was making, again, sure that you had fuzz testing and that you had formal design methodologies that ensured, again, string bounding was done right, and that you were considering the possibility of invalid input and how would you facilitate that, and all of these things that we still talk about today as foundational to good cybersecurity. So did that, and then got a job at Los Alamos National Laboratory, and then spent my next 20 years just up north in Los Alamos working for the National Laboratory, and had a full career there doing everything from software engineering, and then got into cybersecurity, more authentication sorts of things, multi-factor authentication, and then more and more into the cyber domain itself. Actually went into management for a while, got tired of management, got an opportunity to get out of management, came back to New Mexico Tech, and spent another 4 years at New Mexico Tech with Lorie as my advisor, getting a PhD in computer science with a very strong focus specifically on cybersecurity, and doing things like data analytics, graph analysis, looking at large scale enterprise data sets that continue to be a struggle, even in my current role, in terms of understanding what they mean from a cybersecurity point of view. And really spending a great 4 years kind of delving into what all of that means and doing some great research there with Lorie and a number of other collaborators that I had. After that, I went back to the lab, spent a few more years doing fun things. I actually spent a year in Congress as a science advisor to the House Intelligence Committee. Got to ride in some submarines, do fun things like that. Help kind of drive some national policy when it comes to cybersecurity. And then I basically retired from Los Alamos and moved to Minnesota. I then spent 2.5 years doing medical device cybersecurity. Oddly enough, I led a group at Medtronic here in Minnesota with the cardiac unit, basically working to build really good cybersecurity into things like pacemakers, and ensuring that pacemakers have foundational cybersecurity from the ground up, and understanding what that means and how we measure risk. Spent that 2.5 years there. The pandemic happened, had an opportunity to come to work here at Capital One, and here I am. So that's kind of my story and career path. I'll pass it on.
Great, Alex. Thank you very much. Sean Salinas is our next panel. I'm doing these in alphabetical order, just in case you're wondering. Sean Salinas, you want to tell us about your path and where you're at?
Sure. So my name is Sean Salinas. I'm a cybersecurity researcher for the Idaho National Lab, as well as a current PhD student at New Mexico Tech. My career is not nearly as long or as impressive as Alex's. I am very much an early career kind of person. I graduated in New Mexico Tech in 2016 with my bachelor's, and 2021 with my master's. And I'm now pursuing my PhD. My master's project was on a device to ensure one-way communication in computer networks. And it does so in a very simple, high assurance method so that it can be easily auditable, as well as make a reasonable assurance argument. My career started at INL with an internship. I got called kind of on a whim to do a specific project, and I guess I did a good enough job that they wanted me to keep coming back. So I was a 6-year intern for Idaho National Lab, which is, I believe, the current record for longest internship there. After that, I became a graduate fellow for the Idaho National Lab, which is basically kind of like the SFS program, to where you work with the National Lab on your project, on your PhD research, or your master's research. In my case, it was PhD. And they get to, kind of fund your research, and they pay you as a full-time employee, and you are essentially paid to be a student. After my graduate fellowship, I became a full-time employee, and am still working to finish up my PhD. And that's been about it for my career. My projects, I think, are the much more interesting part of me. Idaho National Lab has a we work in the cybersecurity of critical infrastructure. So we work with government agencies, industry, you name it, manufacturing. And what we're trying to do is keep everything that is considered critical infrastructure secure. So that's everything from manufacturing to power plants, sewage treatment plants, water plants. Basically, if it's considered critical, if it goes down in the country and we're in a bad spot, then that's something that we have our hands in. Me personally, I work for a group that I call ourselves the consultants of the rest of the national lab, to where I basically am the one that gets called when they actually need something done and they need it done fast and done well. So there's a lot of projects always moving on. I mean, critical infrastructure is a very wide industry, but when something really has to get done, our group is the one that gets called in. So I've worked on everything from electric vehicle security and industrial control systems through the supply equipment for electric vehicles. Electric vehicles is fresh on my mind right now because that's the current project I'm working on. I've worked with biometrics and authentication units. I've worked in network and incident response, as well as threat hunting, and all the way back down to developing training programs to assist people who are not well versed in cybersecurity to kind of know what they're looking for, kind of indicators of compromise, how to capture data, how to bring it into a point to where, an incident response can happen. That's about it for me. We can turn it back over to Lorie and keep going.
All right, thank you, Sean. And last but far from least, Mayuri Shakamori, you want to tell us about your career path?
Sure. Hello, everyone. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Cool. Awesome. So I'm Mayuri Shakamori. I am a cybersecurity R&D professional at Sandia National Labs. My focus has primarily been on developing solutions to some of the very hard cybersecurity problems for national security missions. So I have quite a bit of an experience, but my path to landing in this domain is quite unconventional. So I was actually born and raised in India, and then I moved to the US pretty early on, and I had worked in India. I had worked in the US before I decided to go back to go get my graduate degree. That's when I was looking at different universities. We used to live in Texas at the time, and aside from applying to some of the schools within the Dallas-Fort Worth area, I ended up meeting Dr. Liebrock during one of the visits to Socorro, where my sister was at the time getting her PhD in chemistry. And I ended up meeting with Dr. Liebrock. And the very first conversation, I kind of really liked the goals and the missions of the programs she was leading at the time. And I applied at New Mexico Tech, and I got in. The prior experience I have had was in various different sectors. I worked in very different areas. I have done some structural engineering. I have done some geographical information systems type analytics. I have worked in the design and development of SCADA systems. This was all because I had a mixed degree at the time that was in computer science, electrical and electronics type degree. And when I decided to go get my graduate degree in computer science, I had to do quite a few bridging classes, if you would. And when I got to New Mexico Tech, I started doing those things. As I was taking all these courses, there came a point where, hey, if I did just 2 more classes, let's say, I will get another undergrad degree from New Mexico Tech. So why not? So I did it. While I was doing all of this, my focus was still in computer science. I knew that Dr. Liebrock was leading various efforts at the time that were focused on cybersecurity. I was just learning about them, hearing about them, but I was not really I didn't think that I was going to go into cybersecurity at the time. So I ended up getting a computer science major and a minor in biology undergrad degree. And then during several conversations with Dr. Liebrock, I ended up joining the National Science Foundation's Scholarship for Service program, which kind of helped steer my career and direction in many different ways. So I got into the program, and from that point on, my focus was completely on cybersecurity. So while at Tech, if those of you who have worked with Dr. Liebrock, you know how it can be. Dr. Liebrock expects like what like publication style projects for undergrad classes. So it can be very, very hard. While it was hard, it was also a great opportunity to learn a lot of things. So I continued on at New Mexico Tech, got into the master's program. As I was finishing up my, when I was in the final year of undergrad, I applied at Sandia National Labs for an internship. I got in. I did a summer internship. I liked it a lot. I loved working there. I learned a lot, and ended up being converting to a year-round intern through my grad school. And I was doing internship while I was in grad school. And eventually I ended up becoming a full-time Sandian. And I've been at Sandia since pretty much 2007. From that point on, my focus has been completely on cybersecurity. The areas I have worked within the cybersecurity is a very large domain, right? Like there's so many different things, as you have heard from the other two panelists. The areas I have worked in and I still enjoy working in are some of these very, very hard national security problems. Now that is also broad. So to give you some examples, the kinds of things I have done are I have done some pen testing, I have done designing secure architectures, I have done digital forensics, I have done security assessments, I have done analytics, help the incident responders with some of the tools that can help do their job better, faster, that kind of thing. I have worked on security of IT OT systems, SCADA. That is because of my previous mixed degree. I have some experience there too. So that kind of helped me working on SCADA systems, understanding how they work, how they can break from an adversarial perspective, how can you secure them and things like that. Right now, currently, I focus on developing analytics and applying data science approaches to some of these hard problems. I enjoy every bit of it. Even to date, I feel like a kid in a toy store when certain problems are presented, especially working at Sandia. I'm pretty sure it's pretty common with national labs type setting where you have so many problems and you have so many projects to choose from. And to me, I'm like a kid in a candy store. I want to work on so many different things, and that just keeps me interested in this area. I continue to learn and apply what I'm doing, and going on 15 plus years in cybersecurity domain. That's me.
Thank you, Mayuri. So, Chris, do we have any questions from the attendees yet?
Nothing in the Q&A, but I will invite all of our attendees to raise their hand to ask a question if they'd like to speak.
Great. So for all of our panelists, what experiences in college had the most impact on your career path?
I can go. I guess I got to the mute button first. It was the projects, the kinds of projects that I worked on for the higher level, like 300 level and above courses. They really helped me understand the core concepts. Sometimes think out of the box to come up with some good solutions. And working with teams and fellow students in those projects, I learned a lot, and they were quite awesome.
Thanks, Mayuri. Guys?
Yeah, I could go next year. I guess a couple things. One is that I, of course, enjoyed all the technical classes that I had along the way, and really appreciating how things work in computing, and appreciate that even today, and I know Lorie and other people have heard me say this, but the fundamentals of things like compilers or operating systems, I find, come back day in and day out when we talk about cybersecurity vulnerabilities and other things. And I still appreciate those immensely. But interesting enough, the other thing that I think about, especially back in my undergrad and even into some of the PhD work I did, is that I've always enjoyed psychology, and the psychology classes I had as part of my electives in undergrad, and even some of the things I did in graduate school, and appreciating that, and I remind especially some of the junior folks of this on a regular basis, that cybersecurity, at the end of the day, we talk about technology all the time, but at the end of the day, it's always about people, both in how they behave on doing the right thing, but sometimes forgetting to do the right thing, like change that password, to the malicious entities and the people that are driving, whether it's, a piece of malware or a piece of ransomware or an intrusion or whatever the activity is. There's always human motivation behind all of these activities, and that matters a lot. And in many cases, it matters more than the technology itself. And so remembering that and truing back to that and thinking about those motivations and why people do what they do, I think is really important. And having that breadth of knowledge just beyond computer science and those classes that I had in psychology is something that I do think about on a regular basis.
Gee, Alex, that sounds like a plug for our transdisciplinary cybersecurity program and the psychology of cybersecurity course. So thanks. Sean, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, so for my career path, the thing that really, I think, influenced it most was my internships. So when I worked, before I had my internships with the National Lab, I had done a lot of consulting work. I had worked in private industry. I had worked for New Mexico Tech even. And it wasn't until I got up to the National Lab and I got to meet the people that I work with now and see the kind of breadth and scope of things that they work on. Myri really hit the nail on the head. I'm a kid in a candy store. Like I say, still to this day, I haven't really worked a day in my life. I just get to play around with computers and electronics with a National Lab budget worth of equipment. So but just having the kind of resources and knowledge that is available, in the National Lab system, as well as just the kind of culture there, like people aren't as competitive as private industry. People are a lot more willing to help you and willing to kind of mentor you, teach you, and then the impact of the projects, of course. I don't know how many people get to say that the work they did today had a positive impact on our national security. Just absorbing all that kind of culture from my first internship really set my career path on the rails when I said, like, this is really what I want to do.
That's great. What do you wish you had learned? What do you most wish you had learned in college but you didn't get?
Oh, for me, it is definitely a little more electronics kind of experience. So a lot of what I do is working with small embedded systems, and a lot of the kind of electronics, a lot of the digital signals, and kind of hardware level debugging and that kind of stuff I had to pick up as I went, and that was certainly challenging. Of course, college kind of teaches you how to learn. And so I knew what to do it, but it was still, kind of a self-guided thing for me. And that was pretty tough. With a little more, I think, experience in the kind of lower level of computer science, I think I would have been a lot better off.
Great. Myri and Alex?
Yeah, I can go next here. I don't have a strong answer there, but I think one of the things that I know I true back too, and I think about is would have loved to had some more legal background. I mentioned early on that I spent a lot of time working with regulatory environments, and I spent a lot of time with lawyers. I should just say that, and sometimes I'm like, wouldn't it have been cool to have had more legal understanding, especially as it relates to the cybersecurity world, because I think even now you look, a lot of the basis for decisions are actually based in laws that were created in the 80s and 90s, early 90s. And so having a good understanding of those things, I think would be really beneficial, just because, frankly, whether you're at the national laboratories or in the commercial regulatory world of fintech, which I'm in now, or medical devices or energy, they all are regulated at some level, and that regulation has impacts on how we do and perform cybersecurity.
Again, they're going to think I'm paying you to plug the program with the ethics and law class. We now have an adjunct professor from Sandia that is a lawyer in cybersecurity that helps with our ethics and law class to make sure that we actually have a legal mind explaining the implications of some of our cyber laws, which is really kind of cool. So Sandy has been really contributing. Mayuri.
So the short answer is I truly can't think of anything. That doesn't mean there is not something out there that, I mean, nothing is perfect, but maybe my answer is I can't think of anything, because I organically kind of landed on some of the projects that I was leveraging what I was learning at Tech already. And once I got to Sandia full-time, majority of the classes I took that were cybersecurity focused, they kind of helped me right away. So I honestly can't think of anything.
All right, great. Well, that means we did something right, which is terrific.
Yeah.
What advice do you guys have for people that are considering a cybersecurity career?
Sorry, go ahead, Ken.
Oh, no, please.
Oh. Oh, I should call you Alex. What am I saying? I meant to say Dr. Kent, but I only said Kent. Sorry. I say balance. Make sure that your course is every semester is balanced. I took a very, very crazy route, and I do not recommend that anybody doing that. I finished my undergrad in 3 years, master's in 1. That was brutal. Do not do that. Pace yourself. Really, it may sound like, oh, it's easy said than done. That is not the case. I truly mean this. Pace yourself and actually enjoy, and you'll absorb things better if you pace yourself. Do not, when you're selecting the coursework, have a good balance of project work, some core concepts, that kind of thing, and just don't try to kill yourself.
Cool. I was gonna say that I think it's important to think about the breadth of what cybersecurity is, and the fact that a career in cybersecurity can mean so many different things and take you in so many different directions, because it's easy to see it as one career path, and at least in my mind, it's almost an infinite number of career paths, from very technical things like Sean mentioned, getting into the digital, the electronic aspects of an IoT device. That's something there, to doing pen testing and vulnerability analysis, to reverse engineering things that are all very technical, but then pulling that back and saying that there's a huge need and opportunity to do things like policy development and big picture consideration of all the pieces and how they fit together. And frankly, even things like how we communicate cybersecurity to non-cybersecurity experts. That takes cybersecurity expertise to do that well. And so there's these very diverse and broad opportunities in cyber that I think are easy to miss when you get focused on, I don't know, one class or one project or whatever it might be. And the reality is that there's so many things out there, and it's important to be aware of what all of those look like for you as somebody starting a career or even advancing through your career, as to what you want to do and what makes you excited and interested. And so making sure you have awareness of all the things that you could do and want to do, I think is super important.
Yeah, so my advice is very similar to Dr. Kent's there. I would say, experience it all, because cybersecurity is everywhere now. It's in the auto industry, it's in the medical industry, it's in the energy industry, it's everywhere. There is no reason for you to not find a job doing cybersecurity in a field that you're passionate about. Like, I'm a car guy. I absolutely love cars. I never thought that I would get to play cybersecurity on a car. You know, that's why I'm so excited about my electric vehicle project, is because I get to play every day. I think I was the only cybersecurity major or computer science major that also had a little bit of a welder fabricator background. And so being able to combine those kinds of things, you know, really helped me be excited and really enjoy my career. Because some days I get paid to just play with 3D printers all day. Like, you know, a lot of people would say there's not a whole lot of cybersecurity there, but, you know, we're printing fixtures or some kind of physical system for a training program or something like that. I get to, you know, when I'm tired of staring at code all day or messing with oscilloscopes and signals, I can sit down and start designing, you know, the next training program that's going to have a whole bunch of, you know, aluminum extrusion to, you know, make this physical kind of thing to train someone who's used to a, you know, a kind of physical interface. And so tying cybersecurity into that is awesome. I never thought I'd get to do that. So I would say, you know, get a lot of experience, kind of round yourself, and, you know, see all the different ways that cybersecurity can be applied, and pick one that you really like and go for it. It's a very rewarding career.
Absolutely.
I think one of the things interesting that the panelists have sort of hinted at, although not explicitly said, is when you say a career, that career can change every year in cybersecurity, and you're still doing cybersecurity. So being ready to adapt and learn and grow and change and explore new things follows right on Sean's comment. Alex, did you start to say something?
Yeah, I was going to just follow up. And in fact, to Lorie, to your point, I have a personal goal of trying to change my career about every 2 years. I think, at least from a personal perspective, I like to sort of focus on something else in the cyber domain about every 2 years. So, which means I'm all right in the middle of that right now. But to the next thing beyond data protection. But the thing I was going to point out is I had this opportunity recently to mentor a high school student that was just graduating this last year, and for a senior project, he was very interested in the cybersecurity domain. And so one of the things I did was got him to talk to 6 different people that I knew in cybersecurity that do different things. From one is a chief information security officer at a company, another is an incident response person, another person was policy, cybersecurity policy sorts of things. One does reverse engineering of malware, and just an opportunity to sort of see this breadth of opportunity. And I really appreciated the fact that I don't think you know, as somebody who's really excited about it and has been doing, you know, things at school and seeing this thing, I don't think he appreciated what all of those different things meant from a day-to-day point of view. And this appreciation that he actually started to form opinions of what sounded the most interesting that he wanted to focus on as he started his college career, and some of the things that were less interesting to him, at least at that point in time. And so I really do encourage people to talk to people doing lots of different things in cybersecurity, because we're out here, we're all have different viewpoints and points of view, and take that all in as you go through your decision-making process and in your education here.
That's great. So Alex
One thing-
earlier mentioned, oh, sorry, go ahead, Mayuri.
So one thing I wanted to add in terms of like, hey, what can you do while you're in college and maybe early career that is going to benefit in a long run? The one thing I'll say is when you're in college, when you're taking all these classes, so much, it can feel like a fire hose of information coming at you, right? Which it is. But what I'll say is, if you find passion in one or two things, let's say as you're taking a class, if you think, for me, digital forensics was really cool. When I took a forensics class, I really enjoyed it. I continue to work in those domains anywhere on my projects, even today, as much as possible. It is something I'm really passionate about. What I encourage students can do is find that area that you really enjoy, and both in college as much as possible, and when you get into workforce in the early career years, focus on those areas and become masters, like become subject matter experts in the first 3 to 5 year time frame once you enter the workforce. And I think gaining the deep understanding and deep knowledge is really good. And if you're passionate about a certain area, it can come naturally too, and that can go a long way. For instance, if you become an expert in networks, for instance, that can be applied to so many different areas. Like Sean and Alex have said, it can apply to medical industry, it can be power grid, it can be any other critical infrastructure or not. So gaining the deep knowledge in at least a handful of subject areas, that's going to go a long way.
Thank you, Mayuri. Alex mentioned earlier the psychology aspects and policy aspects. What other non-technical aspects of cybersecurity have surprised you in your career?
Oh, for me, it was presentation skills. I am daily, it seems, asked to talk either to my peers or someone, less technically smart, I guess is the only word I can think of. And just to kind of explain not only what we're working on, but why it matters. And being able to give kind of like those communication skills in the oral form, in the written form, those I currently lean on, I'd say probably the most outside of my technical skill. And that was very surprising to me. I've always been kind of I always wanted to be kind of the more worker bee person who, you can just kind of leave him in his dark room and, he'll get some work done kind of thing. I don't want to interface with people nearly as much as I used to. And but being good at it really makes my job a lot easier.
I think I would actually second that. I think that the art of communication is something that I think I initially undervalued, but now is a key part of my job almost continuously, and as a opportunity to continue to always improve as well. I think that it always amazes me what people think and know about cybersecurity as non-cybersecurity experts. I mean, for all of us who do this on a day-to-day basis, we have a kind of a common language. The way I describe it, we understand the physics of the cybersecurity world, the cyber world in general. Those don't actually align to the physics of the physical world very well. And as a result, people both overestimate as well as underestimate what is the art of the possible all the time. I spend lots of time reminding senior executives who are, amazing at what they do from a business perspective, but get something completely wrong either in an overestimating or underestimating way, what it means in the cyber domain. Like from a risk perspective, they often get those risks wrong for good reason, and trying to build a mental model that works for them, I find really interesting and challenging, because it's also the case that it's different for different people. It's different in different domains. Like I spent, like I said, 2 years in the medical device world, where everything revolves around patient safety. Now I'm in the financial world, where everything revolves around money. And what cybersecurity risks means to the professionals in these different domains is very different. And so trying to make sure that you can communicate cybersecurity effectively is super important. And then at the same time, understand what they're trying to get out of cybersecurity. So it's also the listening part of that communication. I think presentation is important, but hearing back from them what, as stakeholders, they want from cybersecurity is equally important.
Great. One more question that I have, and I'm hoping we have some questions from our listeners then. What technical areas do you see as in highest demand currently, and where do you see future needs that we haven't even started preparing for yet?
I can kind of try. It is there is a big need in understanding the cloud security. There is a very large need in that area, and I think that is something that is going to continue to be the case at least for the next 5+ years. In the longer run, some of the areas that I see that are challenging, that we as cybersecurity community need to look at, is to build in resiliency and some redundancy, accepting that these things are going to be attacked, they will be taken down. How resilient are we? How can we still operate in the face of a water treatment plant gets attacked, or a gas pipeline that got attacked recently? Those are, like, yes, one-off things, but how do we how can we be resilient? How can we still operate when something like that happens in a medium to large scale? Thinking at that big picture, I think is a big challenge.
So building on that a little bit, one of the things that I'm seeing a lot of is kind of machine learning and artificial intelligence techniques, being able to leverage those kind of techniques to gain knowledge from, see patterns that, us humans can't normally see on their own. But of course, one of the biggest challenges, I think, for that is understanding that it's not an end-all solution. Like, you can't take a bunch of garbage data that you have and then wash it through machine learning and expect to get some value. Garbage in, garbage out very much still applies. But I think the world is kind of moving towards that, just because all of our stuff is getting so big, so complex. We as humans don't have enough time to look it all over. So being able to even just sort through and narrow down the things that we should focus our attention on, I think, is really useful. And building on what Mayuri said, definitely having resilient systems, things that are secure by design, things that will fail safe, those kinds of things I think are really important. And that's probably the only way I know of to get ahead of this whole cybersecurity problem, because patch and pray and, replace, continue that loop forever, that's not sustainable. We're never going to get where we need to be with that model. We have to adapt something else.
Cool. I was going to say, I think that there's demand in just about every facet of cybersecurity these days. So I think it's really open for the choosing, and what do you want to do, and how do you want to do it, and what kind of industry do you want to do it in. I think it's pretty broad. I do appreciate Sean brought up machine learning and AI sorts of things, because one of the things that I've spent some time on recently, and I think there's a few other people in the world that are looking at it now too, but it's the fact that as we move towards machine learning and AI, it is a target-rich environment for the bad guys, because it is so easy to start now talk about, okay, well, you have a expert system and it looks for something, and maybe even it makes decisions from a financial perspective, like whether you should get a credit card or not, and what kind of level of credit should you get out of that, and those are all being driven nowadays out of large scale data. And it's a perfect opportunity from an adversarial point of view to now talk about, how do I game those systems to maximize an outcome that I want. But I can assure you that you, as the producer of the machine learning algorithm or approach, definitely did not intend or want. And this is, I think, a new opportunity from a cybersecurity perspective to appreciate that in a lot of ways, machine learning violates some pretty fundamental tenets of cybersecurity. I mentioned string bounding. Machine learning in most instantiations do not have good bounding structures. They're a black box. By definition, they're intending to not bound things so that they can find some appropriate answer. And so that's why they're bad from an adversarial point of view and opportunistic. I think the cybersecurity opportunity here is to look at it and say, how can we start to build safeguards into our machine learning and our AI infrastructure and algorithms and do the right thing? I'd actually say it even trues back to the cloud opportunities and concerns that exist from a cybersecurity standpoint, and say that there's some similar issues that transcend these two worlds. So I think there's huge opportunity that for continued research and improvement there.
I can't agree more with Sean and Alex. Just a quick comment, Dr. Liebrock. So my thinking there is, if you can break a signature-based detection, you can always break a model, a black box, easy. Actually, it gets more complicated and convoluted when the black box models, those approaches are broken. You often have very little insight into what happened, because not everything is explainable the moment you move into machine learning domain. At least with my signature-based detections, while they are brittle, I can at least say, oh, my regex failed here because I missed blah. I can at least see it. So there are added complications with machine learning. We should not throw away machine learning, because we cannot sit in front of the fire hose of data we all have to see and sift through. We have to take advantage of machine learning, data science, and all those things, while keeping in mind all the things that Alex has touched on.
And Meyer, you brought up an excellent point. We've had discussions recently about, with AI, machine learning, smart systems, you have bias you have to worry about, you have resiliency questions to worry about, and you have exactly what you talked about, and that all I need to do is to be able to figure out a little bit how to bias the system, for example, so that it's not going to detect what I'm doing. Even if it detects you, that's fine.
Yep, exactly.
So there's some really interesting work that's happening on that.
Yes.
Chris, do we have any questions from the group? I haven't seen any more come in.
No, there was a comment, but I'm going to open it up. If you'd like to ask a question, please raise your hand.
Please do. And so I'd like to ask our panelists, do you have something else you'd like to communicate that we haven't touched on?
All right, I'm going to spend 30 seconds on my other area that I think cybersecurity needs to tackle better, and that's risk. This thing that we talk about called risk, and the fact that we, as a cybersecurity domain profession, still don't have what I would call an objective, well-defined, unbiased approach to representing the risks that we talk about all the time. Vulnerabilities, opportunities for intrusion, all of these things that exist and we work with on a day-to-day basis. Unlike other domains, and I would true back to things like the safety domain for the medical world, or even the financial domain, when we talk about the loss of financials around fraud and other things, we are really immature in our ability to understand and articulate risk. And it is to the detriment of us all, unfortunately. And I encourage people to think about that, and not to say there aren't frameworks out there. There's, I mean, NIST's got like 4 of them. The Center for Internet Security's got theirs. The ISO's got like 4 of them now. I mean, there's plenty of frameworks, probably way too many frameworks is part of the problem here. They're all rife with bias and subjectivity, and they don't do us a service of actually representing the risks that I think we have. And it's something that I find as my career progresses farther and farther, I'm finding to be one of the, I mean, it's the unification theory that plagues cybersecurity, if I make a physics comparison here.
You in physics, okay.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Los Alamos.
Carolyn has a question for us.
Great, Carolyn.
So, what awesome career paths y'all have been able to take. Do y'all look to other countries to see if they are doing anything different or better or worse via cybersecurity? Or I'm hoping you'll say US leads the way in that, but you know, there may be other options out there. I was just curious.
Absolutely. I think it would be very short-sighted to not look and see what other people are doing, whether they're in a different industry or a different country. I don't know, like you'd have to narrow it down in order for me to make a good comment about whether we're in the lead or not. I think it's kind of arrogant to say that, yes, we lead everywhere. But I certainly think we have good programs and good stuff in place here for sure.
I'll follow up that and say that actually one of the great things of not working in the U.S. government is that I get a chance to actually work with more foreigners that are not part of the English-speaking world. And I could tell you that like Israel has an amazing educational program around cybersecurity, and frankly, their startup. I mean, we often go to Israel if we're, you know, it's Silicon Valley and it's Israel when you need a really hard problem solved that nobody else has in the cyber domain today. But not to say there's not other countries doing cool stuff. I mean, when I was at Medtronic, the Germany has some really cool things that they're doing around cybersecurity testing that I haven't seen other places. There, you know, yes, definitely a huge amount of diversity out there. And I do want to mention that like Europe's a great example of a place that cybersecurity means something a little bit different. You've heard of GDPR and the privacy regulations of Europe. While we talk about things like confidentiality and integrity of our data in the US, the privacy of individual citizens is the primary consideration for cybersecurity in most of Europe. And it's a societal change and difference there. And so understanding that's really important when you look at that broader set of cybersecurity actions and approaches.
And I think privacy is one of the things that we have not helped our young people understand, because they post so much videos and blogs and all kinds of things and leave everything open. And I have been guilty myself of saying, I'm not doing anything I'm really worried about somebody seeing, so I don't care. But that's the wrong approach, because the I don't care means there's so much data out there about all of us that they can tell so much that you really don't want them to be mining and leveraging against you. And I think, Steffi, I think we're at the end of our time. I want to thank all the panelists. It was great to hear from our alumni, and I really appreciate you taking the time to help us all better understand how your careers are going and where we might go with academic programs to support future students. So thank you. Thank you, Steffi.
Thank you, Dr. Liebrock, and thank you, panelists. This presentation, this panel was very interesting, and I wish I had learned so much of this a lot earlier in my life, but it is great. So thank you guys, and you guys ever want to do another presentation, get a hold of me. We always do cybersecurity webinars, and we will be putting this on New Mexico Small Business Development Center YouTube. So if you, we'll send you the link when we have it posted. And
Sure.
I'd like to thank Christopher for monitoring this whole webinar, and thanks everybody that participated. So thank you.
Happy to
Did
do
you say
it.
something?
No, just want to say happy to do it and appreciate the opportunity.